I am going to go ahead and get started, mostly because I have a lot of cool stuff to share with you today. So thank you for tuning in. First of all, I know you guys are busy. A lot of you are negotiating moving between your office and your home. A lot of you are working with family and in houses with broken air conditioning. And I am really proud of you for sticking it out and for being with us today. If you aren't familiar with us, I know some of you are clients. We're super happy to see you here. If you're not familiar with Qgiv, hello. My name is Abby Jarvis. I work with the Qgiv team. We're an online fundraising platform, and we do a little bit of everything. We're really dedicated to helping you raise more money so you can kind of further your mission and pay less attention to tedious online fundraising pieces and more attention to the things you love. I know a lot of you have this question. Yes, we are recording the webinar. We're going to send you a copy of the webinar. So if your internet goes out or gets silly, or if you have to leave early, don't worry, you're going to get a recording. You won't miss anything. There is a chat box to the left. You can ask questions in there. We have time for a Q&A at the end of the session. So feel free to avail yourself of that. If you're like me and you like having a face to put with the voice that you hear coming out of your computer, this is who's on the call today. My name is Abby Jarvis. As I mentioned, my friend Mike is here today. He is an account executive at Qgiv. He is a wizard when it comes to knowing the ins and outs and all the specifics of the platform. So especially during Q&A, his expertise is going to be invaluable because he will be able to answer all of your questions. I wanted to talk to you all today just about auction best practices and then how you can put those best practices into play using the Qgiv platform. One thing I hear a lot of is very specific questions about how the platform works. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to focus on the best practices and how to do that or do those with the app. If you all have really specific questions about functionality, I would love to talk to you about that. This platform is big and it's powerful and it's easy to use, but there's a lot to cover and I want to make the most of our half hour together. So we're going to focus on the best practices. And the first one I want to get into is something I know is at the top of mind for all of you, and that is how to support in-person and virtual silent auctions. Silent auctions are usually an in-person kind of event, but that is starting, obviously, to be a problem right now. A lot of you are really looking into digital auctions because of the coronavirus pandemic. It is a really awkward time to be a fundraiser, just in general, and it is also kind of an uncomfortable time to be an events planner. I know based on conversations I've had with a lot of you, I know many of you are kind of in a limbo state when it comes to your fall and your year-end fundraising plans. A lot of you are not sure whether you're going to be able to have in-person events or whether you'll have to do things virtually. So I want to talk about how you can use a digital silent auction to cater to both. So using a platform like Qgiv lets you do both. Donors don't have to be on site to participate. It is possible to have a really successful auction totally virtually, but this is also a useful tool at on-site events as well. I do want to emphasize, and I'll go into this later too, that this is useful for your staff and for you as an event planner, as well as for your donors. Just inherent to a digital auction, people can participate from anywhere, they can pay from anywhere, and then you have the ability to arrange either item pickup or drop off or shipping later on. Whether you're running a virtual event or an in-person one, Qgiv's app makes it really easy for people to register for the auction. It's also really easy to check in and participate, and then it's easy to check out and pay for your auctions. I don't know about you guys, but I have participated in silent auctions both as a bidder and as a staff person, and streamlining those processes can be huge for everybody involved. I know as we move into the end of the year and things may or may not start loosening up with the pandemic, There may be people who are uncomfortable going to in-person events even after some of the social distancing protocols are relaxed. This is really helpful for them too. This is a cool way to engage supporters who want to attend your silent auction in person, but maybe aren't comfortable doing so. I've actually participated this way. While we were building this auctions platform, I was on vacation and got to participate in a company-wide auction while I was in another state. So if you do decide to have an in-person event, but you have people who are uncomfortable attending, this is a good way to bridge that gap. One thing I did want to point out here is that it's really handy how the app handles registrations. It guides your participants through downloading the app, creating an account, logging in, and there's a very small learning curve. I'll show you a little more about that process later, but this is something that a lot of people ask us about. You can see right here in the screenshot what happens if you register online. You can get a walkthrough to download the app, or you can scan your QR code with your phone if you're on a desktop. It's really handy. Once you have entered the auction, or once you have entered the auction and then opened up checkout, they can pay their tab right on their phone too. So if you're looking at doing an event later this year, you're not sure whether it's going to be in person or virtual, this can help support you regardless of how you end up running your event. Another best practice I really want to touch on is to build an auction that really highlights your company's brand. So your nonprofit has a unique brand, you have a unique voice. No two organizations have exactly the same event, and it is a great idea to build an event page that really highlights who you are and what you do and how your donors can get involved with you. Building a great auction event page is really important, really for two reasons. So one, it gives you the opportunity to make a case to get people involved. Sharing stories and photos that show participants who their money will help is a really compelling way to get them involved. And two, it gives you kind of a central hub for your event, which is especially important if you are running a virtual event. Even when we see social distancing restrictions ease, like I said earlier, a lot of people may not be comfortable attending in-person events for a while, and having a central place people can go to interact with you and interact with your auction will help you get the most possible participants. So you'll use this page to share event information and to take registrations, of course. There are tons of other cool things you can do. You can show off your sponsors, which is really appealing for them, especially if you do have a low attendance at an in-person event or if you're totally virtual. I don't know about you guys, but most silent auction events I've attended have had sponsorship signage at the event itself. And if you're not actually able to go into an event and see signage, your sponsors may be a little concerned about how to get their name out there. This is a cool way to do that. You can also share event updates. This screenshot is an event update that they posted. They switched their event from an in-person to a virtual auction within 24 hours, and they updated their event page here with a note about the switch. It's a great place to keep people updated. You can also set up fundraising goals. You can set up a donation form for people who want to give instead of bid. So there's a lot of room for creativity here. One really cool thing we're starting to see people do is embedding videos on their page. So nonprofits who are running virtual events have been live streaming entertainment and speakers on YouTube and embedding the live video on their event page. So people get the chance to interact and engage and watch the entertainment while they're on the same page that is sharing updates and encouraging bidding. So all is to say, having a branded page where people can go for information and updates and to register for your event is really easy on Qgiv. So I will say this, I am not a graphic designer. I'm not talented in that department. Trust me, you can ask the designers I work with. But when we were building the platform, each of the Qgiv employees got to try out this platform. And if I can build a silent auction, I promise, so can you. Building out your event page, customizing the registration process, and adding custom content and videos is really simple. You can very easily upload auction items individually, or if you have them in a spreadsheet, you can upload batches of multiple items. And you can also set up fund and eat items and other purchases. Those could be things like drink tickets for an in-person event or raffle tickets or something like that. My personal favorite feature is the push notifications feature. You can send custom push notifications to your participants throughout the event, and you can either schedule them out in advance or you can do them manually. And that's really handy, especially if you're nearing the end of your bidding window, for example, and want to remind everyone to get in last minute bids. You can send out a notification if you're going to hit a really important milestone and you want to encourage donations. There is a ton of freedom over how you can interact with your participants this way. And the clients that we are seeing right now are getting really creative with those notifications. It is very cool. I think one thing that we can all agree on is that silent auctions can be kind of difficult sometimes, if not just for the bidders, then for the staff. So there are a couple of things you can do to make participating easier and to make handling participants easier for your staff. So we know that people are most likely to participate if it's easy. Humans are super predictable. If participating in something is hard, we don't want to do it. I'm sure there are exceptions. There are people who do ultra marathons on purpose, which I don't understand. That's very hard, but they do it anyway. But when it comes to apps and technology, people don't want to do things if it's hard. We get frustrated when we perceive something as being inconvenient. And if you have ever gotten antsy waiting to check into an event and to get your bidder information, you know what I mean. And that's why our clients really appreciate the check-in process in this app. It only takes a minute or two to claim your ticket. You enter some information and then you get into the auction on the app. And this is a huge plus for virtual events. That plus is that participants can do everything on their own. It's also really useful for in-person events. So if you have a virtual event and you can't have a staff member standing around offering to answer questions, having something as simple as this is really useful. And then at the in-person event, you can avoid the lines that are kind of inherent to silent auctions. So instead of starting the night by standing in line, people can check in ahead of time or while at their event itself, and that frees up your staff for other activities. And the same concept applies to the end of the night as well. People can just tap to pay on their phone. Item winners can drop by your table on the way out to pick up their items. And then people who owe money for fund and eat item or raffle tickets or other purchases don't have to do anything after they pay on the app. So they don't even have to get in line at all. How many of you have run a traditional paper sheet bid? You just want to chime in. I have done paper sheets. Oh, lots of you have done paper bids. I have participated as a bidder in those kind of paper sheet auctions, and I have also worked as a volunteer checking people out. It can be exasperating, if not just for donors and for the staff. I really wanted a zoo package for my nieces and nephew at the last one I participated in. But that meant that I had to keep getting up and going over to the table to see if anyone had outbid me, which was kind of a pain because it was a huge venue and I was wearing high heels, which I don't wear. And it was especially a pain if I was talking to someone. So I had to choose between enjoying the company or winning the auction item that I really wanted for my nieces. With our app, your participants don't have to choose. When they're outbid, they get a notification in the app right away, letting them know that they've been outbid, and then they can go and increase their bid from there. They can also place their initial bid with a quick swipe. And I'll never forget the head designer asked he said that his goal was to be able to let people bid without putting down their drinks, which is really handy. So it's very easy. It's very straightforward. They don't have to get up and leave their table. They don't have to interrupt their conversation. They can just update their bid right there. And that means more bids and more money for you. And then once the auction closes, a participant gets an invoice and they can pay it just with a couple of taps. From there, item winners can go by your pickup table, show you their bidder number, or you can scan their QR code and you can pull up what items they've won. It's really simple, it's very streamlined, and it helps your supporters and your staff end the night on a good note. I mentioned earlier that we show people how to use the platform. If you're worried that your supporters will have a hard time with the app, I am here to reassure you. This is what the onboarding process kind of looks like for the app. When someone registers, they get an email containing a prompt to download the app. It's also on the confirmation page that I showed you a few slides ago. Then the app kind of guides them through setting up an account, getting push notifications enabled. That lets you communicate with them throughout the night, and then entering the payment information that they want to use for the bid. And then everyone at the Qgiv office, including people like me who had no idea what to expect from a silent auction app, went through this process to make sure it's smooth and simple. And if a room full of people who have never used this app before can figure it out, we know that it is going to be useful and easy for your clients as well. Not your clients, your participants. I've mentioned the benefits of simplifying check-in and check-out, both for participants and for your staff. So I wanted to look in a little bit at what that means for you. We know that streamlining check-in and check-out helps your participants start and end the night on a positive note, and it is really useful for staff as well. I recently went to a March of Dimes silent auction that had hundreds of attendees. That's where I got the zoo package. And the volunteers were amazing. They were working at this frantic pace to get everyone checked in. We checked in, they gave us a little brochure, they gave us our bidder number, they told us where we were supposed to sit. Everything was really well handled, but everyone was very overwhelmed at the table. I've also worked at silent auctions where staff and volunteers had to collect paper bids. And when we did that, we had to organize them by bid number, calculate the bidders' totals, check them out. We had to match bidders to their bidder numbers so we knew who won what. And then we had to retrieve their items for them. So both my group of volunteers at the Our Silent Auction and the March of Dimes group had great systems in place, but it was still really stressful. And simplifying those processes, like I said, is great for your participants, but it's also really wonderful for the people who are helping at your event. Self check-in and checkout can reduce the amount of work your staff needs to do, both at the beginning and the end of the event. And the best thing is that that frees them up for other things. They can mingle with your donors, they can greet people, they can make sure you have enough at the bar. And then at the end of the night, there are more hands on deck to retrieve auction items for checkout. In my opinion, the onboarding and getting checked in is really great, but the checkout is particularly useful, again, because I've worked some silent auction checkouts. Instead of having to manually tally up totals for people's bid numbers, matching the bid number to the bidder, having them pay, and then getting their items, your staff only has to scan the participant's QR code, confirm that they've paid, and then grab the items that they've won. That's great because it's less stress, but it also means that there's less room for error. I don't know about you, but I have definitely made mistakes when tallying up bidders' totals, and that holds up the line. It stresses everyone out, stresses me out. And doing this can help you avoid a lot of stress and a lot of clerical errors. The last tip I want to look at, I've talked about virtual silent auctions a little bit throughout this session, but I do want to give you some special tips on how you can make a virtual auction extra engaging. We're seeing tons of really creative virtual auctions, and I want to share some tips that will make yours a success too. We have seen so many people get so creative with the types of virtual entertainment they use at their auctions. I wish I could show you all of them, but that would take up way too much time. So one example that we saw is Boys and Girls Club of Southern Minnesota. They did a series of Facebook Live videos, and that was a great way to keep people engaged throughout the event. We've seen others mix live videos and pre-recorded ones. That is a really cool way to avoid technical difficulties if your program includes multiple streamers who are in multiple locations. You could have a live streaming MC and then pause that live and share pre-recorded videos from keynote speakers or performance artists or whoever else you're featuring in your program. Others have done streaming videos of really fun interactive activities. My favorite was a live streamed dance class, which had to have been a hoot if you could have been a fly on the wall in some participants' houses. All this to say, virtual events do certainly have their limitations in some areas, but there is a ton of room for creativity. I will say that raffles also translate really well to virtual events. We're seeing lots of nonprofits do straightforward raffles, and we're seeing some other creative raffles I've never even heard of. One of those that I'd never heard of was wine pull bingo, which is totally something I want to try. We've seen other wine pulls where people could buy a bottle on their app, and then they would choose a number. That number was pulled and related to a bottle of wine. People are getting very creative and is very fun to watch. Of course, one of the fun parts of in-person events that I think all of us miss right now is seeing people and spending time with donors and supporters and other people who all love the same cause we do. And that is a little harder with virtual events, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And any tool you can use to connect the people who are attending your event virtually is going to go over really well. Facebook Live videos, you can do Instagram and YouTube Live as well. It gives people a way to engage both with you during the event, but also with each other. One thing you could do is encourage participants to join their own Zoom rooms so they can participate together even if they're apart. I know my friends and I have attended live streaming concerts, and we're all in a Zoom meeting room together, so we can at least have that kind of fellowship there. This photo here actually is from March when people could hang out in groups of 10 or smaller. This group of people got together to watch a streaming event and participate together. So they all had their cell phones, and I think somebody had an iPad, and they all watched the live streaming videos together. They were warring with each other to bid on items all in one group. This is also great if you have families that are doing the I think people call it quarantine bubbling, where you have like a few friends that you kind of relax around. This could be fun for that too. If you don't want to try to get people involved in different Zoom rooms or other meetings, you could also try a hashtag. That's a fun way to encourage people to participate. My current favorite example was a nonprofit that encouraged people to get really dressed up and fancy for their virtual gala, and then they asked people to share their outfits on an event hashtag. So you could scroll through the hashtag and look at everybody all dressed up in their living rooms. It was really fun. If you are using the Qgiv app, you could even do a well-timed push notification to remind people to post what they're wearing or share where they're participating from, or just meet people who are supporting the same cause they are. So I shared 5 very basic best practice tips and give you a look at what that can, or how that can be applied to your Qgiv silent auction platform. I wish I could really go in depth on all of the cool things you can do with this platform, but it is so flexible and you can do so much that I wanted to mostly focus on giving you some ideas of all the cool things you can do without getting really technical with you. If you do want to learn more about the platform, you can talk to a real person about what you're looking for. You can give specifics on your event and what you're looking for, and we can give you specific details on how you can use this platform. Please let us know. One thing I do want to share is that access to this auctions platform has a couple of neat perks that not everybody knows about. The auctions platform also does include access to the year-round donation forms. It includes access to simple events and a few other cool tools that you can use even when you're not actively running an auction. And 2, you don't have to sign any long-term contracts to use it. I know many of you just have like one silent auction that you do a year. You don't need it year round. So if you use this tool, you can add the auctions tool for your event. You can use it when you need it and then downgrade to a different pricing package when you don't need it. We don't want you to pay for tools you aren't using. And then to reassure a lot of you, especially if you've never done a silent auction before, or if you've never done a virtual silent auction before, every Qgiv user gets unlimited training and live customer support. So if you do come up against an obstacle you're not sure how to overcome, you can call us. You'll always talk to a real person who can help you figure it out. We do encourage people to start working on their auction and to start working with Qgiv on your auction like 30 days or so out. That gives us plenty of time to help you get familiar with the platform, help set up your auction, and get you really comfortable with the system so your event goes off without a hitch. I do see that there are some questions to answer, and I'm going to dive into those now. If I don't get to your question, don't worry, someone will be in touch with you to give you an answer. And I'm going to bring in Mike at this point. Mike, someone asked actually about pricing. They said, I noticed that the pricing online is in terms of months. Is there an option to just use it once for an online silent auction, and does it work in Canada? I know that you can use it once for an online silent auction. You can pay by month and then downgrade when you don't need it, but does this work in Canada?
Unfortunately, no, it does not work in Canada currently.
Okay. And then someone asked, and you would be able to speak to this, can the auction be linked to a concurrent walk event? And if so, can those purchases sync with walk team totals?
So you could link it on the page itself, but actually feeding the, let's say, guests or fundraisers into one platform to the other, they don't speak to each other at this time. So it would be looked at as two separate events. So that would be two registrations. But we do offer a hub page where you can display everything under one page, and then they can go in and register for the walk, and then we'll go register for the auction as well.
Yeah. So Bruce, if that helps, you could have the overall totals for both events show on one page. But if a walk team member, for example, bought something at an auction item or bought an auction item, I don't think there's a way to get that purchase to tie into their overall fundraising, if that makes sense.
Right.
Mike, someone asked, is there a website version of this, or do participants need to access the event page through the app?
So you can see they can register for the event. They can look at the items on the event as well via the website. So all that can be viewed before they start bidding. So they can come to the landing page, check out the items, register for the event, maybe purchase raffle tickets during the process as well. But the bidding, just to make sure I clarify, all is going to happen within the application itself.
Right. There are a few reasons for that. One of my personal favorites is because everything is in the app. Everyone has more or less the same experience. When you are looking at bidding and getting notifications and everything on different browsers, there are lots of different browsers, lots of different devices people can use to access the auction, and people will have a more comfortable experience if they're on an app. It's much easier to control and make their experience better. Wendy asked, is Qgiv strictly auction focused? Wendy, no, we have a lot of different tools that you can use. So we do have regular year-round donation forms. You can do simple events with those. So simple event registrations instead of something more complicated like an auction. We also have some mobile giving tools, and we have a peer-to-peer platform and a few other really cool tools, all of which are managed in the same place. So if you are doing a year-round fundraising event or year-round fundraising campaign and you want to add an auction, you can do that. You pay for the auction kind of as an add-on, and then all of your activity that's handled through Qgiv is in one place. Mike, this is another one. Are there any mappings available with the auctions platform? Does that work with, say, the Bloomerang integration? Does it do the same thing?
Yeah. Yes, it will integrate. So it's all going to, yes, the the information collected through the auctions will map directly into Bloomerang for sure. That's fully integrated.
Okay, perfect.
And it works. And just to clarify a little bit more, it works if you're currently utilizing our Bloomerang integration. It works exactly the same place. Like you'll just see that as another. I think they call them campaigns in Bloomerang. Then you can feed that information from our platform into Bloomerang automatically.
Awesome, thank you. Larry asked a really interesting question. Do you think that this is an all or nothing approach where we either use paper or electronic, but not both? I ask because 95% of our at event donors are older and are less comfortable with app-based giving. Larry, there are some really interesting ways to approach this mix. And I know that delivering the best possible experience to your supporters is how you raise money. So I've got two ideas here. So one, we anticipated more friction with older donors than we're actually seeing. So we've started doing follow-up calls with most or all of the people who are currently running auctions on this platform. And we anticipated much more pushback from older donors than we're seeing. That being said, there is always going to be pushback at some point. And there are a couple of ways you can work with this. So one, I would be reluctant to say that you should do paper and electronic at the same time, mostly because if an item is going for, say, $350 on paper, but it's already up to $500 on the app, that could be really uncomfortable for people. What we're seeing instead is the idea of staff volunteers who are on hand to help older clients who are not as comfortable with the bidding process on the app. And that has taken a few different forms. We've had people who have almost like a valet approach where a staff person, because they're not tied up at the table so long, are going around and helping their older donors bid on items. Or there is the option to manage bids on the organization side. So if you have someone who doesn't want to download the app, but they really want to bid on something, they can come to you instead of going and writing on paper to check what the current bid is and to add their own bid. It's the same concept as a paper bid, it just is in person instead of on paper. So instead of them updating their bid on a paper sheet, they would update it with you. So it's the same experience, they're just updating their bid in a different way. I think that is most of the questions. I will say, oh, Larry had another one. Are there any integrations with webinar service providers? So Qgiv could be used for check-in and auction functions while event content is handled by webinar service. Larry, if I am understanding your question correctly, I think you're asking, are there any integrations with things like Zoom or GoToMeeting or any of the live streaming platforms that would facilitate donor engagement and kind of the entertainment side of things? Right now, there isn't an integration. What we're seeing people do, so I've got a couple of examples. What we're seeing people do are two things. One, they are encouraging people to register and participate. They register on the website, and then the page for the auction includes a note about where people can tune in to engage. So when Boys and Girls Club of Southern Minnesota decided to run their program on Facebook Live, they just let people know that they could tune into Facebook Live to see all the entertainment and the keynote speakers and all the live auction items there while they participated on their phones. The other thing people are doing that is really interesting is using live streaming embedded on the event page itself. So what you could do, this really only works, I think, right now with YouTube. YouTube has a feature where you can embed a live video as it's happening on your event page. So you could pull up your auction event page, there would be an embedded live stream video. So the streaming works on the Qgiv page, but they aren't integrated with each other. People have done it through Zoom, where everyone just tunes into the same Zoom room, I guess you would call it. The staff emails a link to the proper Zoom room to everyone who is registered. People can pull up Zoom on their computers and then participate on their phones. So that's really how we're seeing people get creative with virtual events. And then Mike, one more question. Can you provide a range for the costs, the event or the auction platform cost?
Sure. So there's two options for the monthly cost, or monthly or quarterly. So monthly is 229 a month, and then quarterly would be broken out into 199 a month. You pay 3 months at a time, breaking out to 199 a month. And then we are taking 3.95% plus 30 cents per transaction, 1% more for American Express.
So Nancy, you asked that question. So that's the pricing for the auction platform. If you're not using the auction platform and you want to go down to a simpler package that is less expensive, you can go all the way down to $0 per month and just the processing fees, or you can choose some other products there based on what you're looking for. So the simple auctions that I mentioned earlier, where it's just event registrations and I mean, everything else is handled by your staff. That's included in the $0 a month only processing fee package. If you're talking about the auction events and auctions, getting people registered, getting people signed up, and managing the auction is all handled in that one auction platform. So you don't have to use two platforms to do the auction piece. All right, those are all the questions that we have today. I will send you a follow-up tomorrow morning, unless YouTube is very silly like it was last week. You'll get that email tomorrow morning. It will include a recording of this, so you can come back and look at it. If you are talking about doing something like this with your board or other leadership, you can send them this webinar. I'll also send you a really cool auctions planner that we put together that will help walk you through the process of starting an auction from start to finish and then following up with your participants. And I'll send you a couple other blog articles and some examples from clients who are doing really cool virtual silent auctions. Everyone, you have been wonderful. You've asked so many questions and given us so much feedback. I really appreciate you being here today. It's Thursday. You've almost made it. Tomorrow's Friday, and then it's the weekend. You're doing great. I know you guys are working really hard at your mission, and we are seeing it. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Everyone have a good Thursday. We will talk to you tomorrow.